Hello YouTube University students, and welcome back to Opa's Garage. And in the garage today we're going to be working on my wife's 2006 Chevy Trailblazer, which a couple weeks ago she told me was making a rattling sound coming from the back when she would go over bumps on her way to work driving down the backcountry roads. Now my first thought was sway bar bushings, so I slid up underneath the truck, tapped on the sway bar, and sure enough, it rattled. The bushings had gotten worn, which that's a pretty common occurrence with any vehicle that has a sway bar. So my thought was, well, I'll go ahead and change out the bushings, easy peasy, keep Mama happy. So I got a bushing kit. Now the rear sway bar passes through two bushings that look like this, and so I got new bushings and was planning on installing them, and there's a bolt that goes through here. Well, when I was taking this one out, the bolt broke. So once the bolt broke off, I decided, nah, I'm not going to try to drill the bolt and get it out of there and then find another bolt. I just decided, screw it, I'm going to take the sway bar off. And of course, when I was trying to take the sway bar off, the dog bone bolts didn't want to come loose. So got out the handy dandy cutoff wheel, got the dog bones off, and took the sway bar off. And I told my wife, there you go, all fixed. And a few days later she come home and she's like, nope, Trailblazer's still making a funny rattling noise. As you can tell, we are no longer at Opa's Garage. Any of you that have seen my video on how to build a engine rotator will recognize that we are at the shop that I work at. And today's a Sunday, so nobody's here. But I am fortunate enough to work for a company that gives me accessibility to this shop anytime, day or night. Now the reason why I'm here on a Sunday is because once I started tearing into this to try to figure out what the noise was, in the words of my daughter, I was big mad. What upset me was the fact that just recently we had new tires put on my wife's Trailblazer. It was probably about the same time that my wife noticed the noise, and that was one of the things that I thought, and I thought, well, maybe they forgot to tighten some lug nuts, and I checked that. But they had all four wheels off of this Trailblazer. And one of the things that I learned years and years ago when I first started doing mechanical work is anytime that you are working on any vehicle, the one thing that you do is you look at things. I had a repair shop years ago, and I had a guy that the only thing that he did was basic stuff. He did oil changes, he did tire changes, tire repairs, installed batteries. But I have to give the kid credit. The one thing that he was really good at, if he pulled your wheels and tires off of your vehicle, he was looking at your brakes. If he had it up in the air, he was looking at your exhaust. He was looking at things. Well, it's obvious that that's no longer the case with mechanics today. Like I said, this was at a tire shop. They had the wheels off. But had this been in my shop, I'm pretty sure that that boy that did oil changes for me would have noticed that. But yeah, this right here, apparently this is a pretty common problem with these trucks, because I got online and sure enough they offer this bracket here. I think you can buy them by the pair online for like $100 or something like that. So we have a plasma cutter, which I don't have at my shop. I've got a torch, but we also have welders, which I have a smaller welder at my shop or in the garage. But I have everything that I need here to make that bracket, weld it in, and make sure that it's not going to come apart again. So that's why we brought it to the shop on a Sunday. Let's get started. All I can say is, wow, GM, that's actually part of the frame. And look at how they got this nice little bucket right here for people who live up north where they salt the roads, for the salt to just kind of lay in there and rot everything away. There is a lot of rot up and through there. One thing I do want to mention, when I still had the upper control arm in place, and I was showing you how it flopped around, I did not have the back bolt tightened. There's a bushing in there. It's a rubber bushing. It acts like a torsion type bushing. So it didn't flop around like that when everything was all tight. It basically stayed in that general area, and what we were hearing was every now and then when you hit a bump, it would rattle up against that right there. So that wasn't just flopping around in there because, yeah, if it was flopping around in there like that, I would have caught that a long time ago, because that would have been a rattle that would have been non-stop and would have been easy to find. But if you work in a shop, if you're just doing the oil changes, look stuff over. You're underneath there where you might be able to see something that the customer doesn't know about. So look things over when you're underneath the vehicle, when you're working on the brakes, when you're taking tires off. If you're underneath the hood, don't just work on what the customer or what your wife is complaining about. And yes, this is partially my fault. I should have looked it over a little bit better to make sure. When I took the sway bar off, I should have driven it down the road, down a rough country road, and I did not do that. So that's on me. Not real happy with myself over the fact that I didn't make sure that I had fixed the problem. I just assumed that I fixed the problem. Well, this is what we have. Nice thing about bringing it to the shop, got the needle scaler out, got a couple of big grinders, small grinders, got the torch with the rosebud, got the plas cutter, got the shop vac to suck up. You wouldn't believe how much rust was back up and through there. But anyway, put the rosebud on the torch and just kind of heated everything up in there. And I don't know if you know anything about rust, but as soon as you start heating up rust, if it's loose rust, it'll pop right off. And so that was really handy. And then take the needle scaler and did a bunch of needle scaling. Man, that's a big old hole, but I've got some decent metal around it that I think I'm going to be able to make a patch and make it stick. So let's keep going. One quick thing I wanted to mention was I'm sure that some of you are thinking, oh, this is kind of dangerous. You're at that shop all by yourself. If something were to happen, we have protocols in place for something like this. One of my co-workers that lives close by, I let him know that I was on my way over here and that I'd be at the shop. That way, if I needed him, I knew that he would be at least at home. The other thing is I have my phone set to go off once an hour, and so once an hour I call my wife to let her know that, hey, I'm okay, I'm not hurt, nothing bad has happened, so forth and so on. So now to gain access to the top of this mount here, I ended up having to take the plasma cutter and cut out this part of the body, and then the next thing that I did was I did all the grinding up here to get everything good and shiny. Then I made me a template out of cardboard and made me a hole here, made me the access hole there for the bolt. The reason that I made it as long as I did is so that I could have an area to weld to back here. I'll also have an area to weld to down here, down here. The more places you can weld, the better off you're going to be. The reason that I made that hole so big for right there is because I'm using a piece of 1/8 inch flat stock that's about 4 inches wide. And once I weld that to this, that's going to set out, that 1/8 of an inch. And the arm does not actually, the arm bolts up to this piece of metal right here. So if I set it off by 1/8 of an inch, then everything's going to stick out. This is not going to line up properly, and everything's going to be off. Wouldn't have been a huge deal, but I cut that hole there. Nice job with a plasma cutter, huh? Or maybe a hole saw. Once again, one of the reasons why bringing it to the shop was a better idea. So then I cut me a bigger piece that will actually be sitting flush where the old piece sat, and that's where the arm will bolt to. And then I made this bolt because we're going to tack everything. I need to put this piece back in place, tack it there temporarily, and then I'll stick this piece in there, tack it temporarily, and then I'll use this to line everything up, and then I'll be able to mark this piece here so that I will know where it goes on there. So let me get all that done, and then I'll show you what we got. Well, it ain't the prettiest weld job that you've ever seen in your life, I'm sure, but do I think that it's going to hold? Most definitely. So inside plate is on. Now to get the outside plate on and reinforced, and then get everything put back together, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's all done. Well folks, there you have it. She's all done. Do the welds look the prettiest? Nope, but the paint covers it up, so I'm good with that. Put this little reinforcement right here, just because there really wasn't anywhere else to attach down at the bottom. Got this all up here, all welded up. Welded a little piece of flat stock up underneath here. Welded that in solid. You saw where I welded the plate, and everything went back together just like it should. So like I said, is it the prettiest? No. Is it functional? Yes. It's a vehicle with 200,000 miles. She's not going to be driving it much longer. I'm sure she's going to be looking for something different with 200,000 miles. That's usually where her cutoff is, and she starts wanting something different. So this will take care of this thing for the rest of its life, or at least the rest of its life with us, and I'm pretty sure it'll probably last the rest of its life until it ends up in a junkyard. With that being said, I'm going to wrap this video up and put the wheel back on and head on home. Until next time, keep living your best life. Get on out in the garage and fix something.